That's where we stand with the NFL pick'em at this point. It is now time to go back. I teased it at the very beginning. Bama, as a 12 seed, makes a run. Before we talk about my predictions, I have the rankings pulled up, so I'll throw them up here on the screen. Let's address I want to say elephant, but I think bulldog in the room might be more appropriate. They dropped 9 spots. 9 spots after going to Ole Miss and getting beat up. There's no other way that you can say that. There was at no point in this game was Georgia physically capable of standing up to the Ole Miss Rebels. Lane Kiffin just coached the game of his career. That's the biggest win of his entire career. That keeps Ole Miss in the playoff race. And now Georgia, if they don't win this weekend at Tennessee, Kirby Smart's going to be an 8-3, 9-3 team that totally misses everything that they're striving for, because this is a tight ass race and Georgia had no room for error, and they made a big goddamn error.
And it's an error that so all reports. First of all, we'll talk about this Tennessee Georgia game a lot more next week. But Nico Iamaleava is a game time decision, and he's been badly injured, so there's no reason why Georgia should not win that game. What baffles me is Texas. Georgia beat Texas, right? They beat Texas in Texas, by the way, in Austin, and Texas is the third ranked team in the country. Like, I'm not saying, obviously Texas has less losses than Georgia, but Georgia's 2 losses are to Alabama, 10 seed, Texas, 3 seed, and you're telling me that we're dropping to 12? Miami,
no, Alabama and Ole Miss are their 2 losses.
Alabama, Ole Miss. But either way, and they have a win over Texas. Like that's too. Like I get it that you have to knock teams down, but I don't understand. Frankly, I cannot sit here and look, we've talked about selection committees and all this, and I go back to old college basketball thing is strength of schedule means something. Strength of playing opponents means something. You cannot sit here and tell me Notre Dame's better than Georgia. Right?
They beat Texas A&M.
You cannot sit here and tell me that BYU is that much better than Georgia either, too.
They're undefeated.
I'm aware of all this.
No, I know. I get what you're saying. I think we need another week of the rankings to come out, because last week, what was I saying? They're supposed to take away the brands. They're just supposed to rank what the teams have done. They're just supposed to look at the resumes. They didn't. And now this time they did. No, they did, because guess who moves up and got the respect that they deserve. Granted, the strength of schedule is not that great. Indiana played a shitty game. BYU played a shitty game. I think BYU's loss, or BYU's close call, is way worse than Indiana's close call was, because they got handed that game by the referees.
Very lucky. And
they got handed that game.
I also just don't understand either. They were the 9th team. They barely beat a Utah team that's below 500. By the way, let's not forget. I get it's a rivalry game, but still.
Nighttime in Salt Lake is different. Even this season, they haven't played many of the night games, but that game was kind of ridiculous the way that it all ended out. But BYU finally got moved up. Indiana finally got moved up. I think it comes down to the fact that you look at this Georgia season, Nico, and there has not been a game where they went start to finish the way that they have been the last few years. It's not all Carson Beck. I went back and I watched a whole bunch of things. I listened to a lot of shows. He's not doing himself any favors. He has 14 turnovers in 10 games. So bad. Awful, but it's not just him. His receivers are not getting open. They're not running as crisp of schemes as they normally do. Their defense is letting up more explosive plays. They've been playing with fire. They're playing with fire just like everybody else so far this season. There has yet to be a team, I think, outside of Oregon, but then again, go back to that game against Idaho early in the year. Oregon almost has one of the worst losses on the season, but yet here they sit, number 1 team overall and undefeated. This season is just on crack. So I don't know if we necessarily have to argue about where teams are or where teams aren't yet. I want to see what this 3rd week of rankings looks like, because after the 3rd week of rankings, we'll know whether or not they're just going to vomit out a whole new set of teams, or are they going to start going back to branding gets more importance instead of the actual play on the field.
Greg McElroy, obviously quarterback for Alabama, brought up a very interesting point. Is we could get to a situation where there is a 8-way tie for the SEC championship. Where every single team, we're talking about Texas, we're talking about let's go down this: Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia, Texas A&M. You go in there too. LSU, they're probably further down the list. Yeah, I'm sure, and all have 3 losses. Where it goes, by the way, the strengths of schedule. Like it goes by, and you know what 2 teams will represent? Alabama, and I'm pretty sure it's Georgia. I'm pretty sure the 2, or maybe Georgia is the one that we can win. So maybe I know it's Alabama's one of those teams, and I don't know who the other one is. But there is a real world where Alabama still has a chance at this SEC championship. And Jimmy, you want to talk about some put on my alien hat here, thinking for a second. There's a chance the SEC could not get a bye. I'm going to be careful with my words there. It's not a great chance. There's a slight chance because if BYU ends up undefeated, right, goes wins out, wins the Big 12 championship, they're undoubtedly in a bye, right? Have a bye. Say Oregon wins out, gets a bye. Say Miami only has 1 loss this season, gets above, and they end up in a situation where they get a bye. 1 loss, just 1 loss.
Now you're losing me.
1 loss Miami.
Now you're losing
3 loss Alabama. Just say 3 loss Alabama, 1 loss Miami. And then that 4th spot, 1 loss Boise State. There's a real conversation where if you're the college football committee and Alabama sneaks their way into winning the SEC championship with 3 losses, which obviously they only have 2 right now, so they'd have to lose another game somewhere down the line. Things can happen still. It's very, like I said, very, very small world this happens, but you can't. It's going to be a very, very hard discussion to have for 2 conference champions that have 1 loss, as opposed to a team that has 3 losses.
It won't be that hard because they
3
will
losses
just
even.
they will just put. There is no. Yeah, there was no world that they would put Boise State in a better position than Alabama. And I get that we want.
I agree with
Nico,
you.
I get what you're saying, but do we really think that this is all based off of merit? No, this is a subjective rankings list.
Yeah, you're not
So
wrong.
they're going to sit there in the room and say, there ain't no fucking way the Boise State Broncos are getting a bye to the quarterfinals and Alabama has to go on the road in the first round. There ain't no way.
I just think that if Alabama backs their way into an SEC championship and every single team has 3 losses, so basically they beat the shit out of each other these last couple weeks, that's a conversation.
They become the Pac-12 of the Southeast.
It's always and look, and obviously, the SEC has some of the best teams in the country. I think no one's denying how good Georgia is, how good Alabama can be at times. Obviously, Ole Miss showed it. Tennessee has showed it. Texas has showed it.
Shit, Vandy's a tough game this year.
Vandy's a tough game. Like the SEC is still one of the best conference, if not the best conference in football. I'm just saying, like they're kind of going to beat themselves up to a point where they're going to be the 4th bye. I'm serious. That's a conversation where they'll be that team where they have to give it to them because they're SEC team, whatever. But it's the 4th bye where you have to play a BYU or you have to play a tough opponent in the 2nd round. Yeah. I don't know.
I get like we're on the same page, but they're just like we're hearing about different scenarios. I'm hearing about the scenario that the Big Ten is probably going to get 4 teams in. Because all of their teams that are still 1 loss or less don't have to play each other.
Just think
except for
Oregon, Ohio State. I think that's almost 2 guarantees in.
Indiana,
if they only lose to Ohio State, they're in. If they're only lost, if they beat Ohio State, obviously they're guaranteed in, no matter how they finish off. But
Penn State,
and then Penn State, I don't think there's any denying that. I don't even think that's a hot take.
I'm not saying that it's a hot take. I'm just saying that they're the only conference that have the ability to have that many teams in. Every other conference is going to be, I think, lucky to get 2, and it's unfortunate that there won't be more group.
The Big 12 and the ACC will only have 1 representative. I will stand on that. I think
if BYU loses and that's their only loss on the season, you think they miss it entirely? I can't see that.
Well, then we're still talking about the same conversation. Alabama over them? Right? We're talking about the bye. Alabama is that last team, and BYU has an easier schedule.
If Bama is a conference champion, then yeah, they would go.
I'm saying not even conference champion. If Bama is 9-2 or what's the number? 10-2 is it a 12-game season? I don't know how it is. 10-2. It's 10-2, and BYU is 10-1 with a conference championship loss. or whatever the record. I don't know how the record's. You know what I'm talking about. One loss and Alabama wins out. That's the conversation we just had with Boise State being above them in having a chance of having a bye. Does the committee think that BYU, who almost lost to Utah, a team that's below 500, or an Alabama team who's only lost to teams that are in the playoff currently, right? That's the world we're living in right now, where like this is the I cannot stress this enough. College basketball in March is the best time of the fucking year for a reason, because these conversations we're having are spread across the country on a deeper level with smaller schools than the ones we're talking about. I just think that if Alabama wins out and if Georgia wins out and BYU loses their conference championship, I think the committee's going to have a very, very tough time picking BYU over them, especially if it's only one loss difference.
That's why it'll be interesting to see what happens next week. I think next week is where we start to get a little bit more clarity. Looking back here, I'm going to throw up the bracket again so everybody can see what we're talking about. Play some college football 25, damn it, if you don't know what we're talking about. Top 4 conference champions get a bye. It is not Power 4 conferences only. It is the top 4. They will be seeded as such. And then it goes from there. The 5th seed will be the next conference champion, and then it's just at-large bids. Last week,
wait, I heard something today too that I thought was so interesting. The 5th seed may be the spot that everyone wants more than anything.
Yeah,
because that 4th seed is going to be BYU, Boise State, or could be Miami. Like, hell yeah! If I'm at Notre Dame, if I'm at Tennessee or Indiana or along those lines, if I'm that 5th seed, I think I have a very good chance of getting to the Final Four if I get past that first game, especially when you play a lower level 4 seed.
No, it's an interesting. That's where it's going to start being real fun with college football. Is now you have to worry about where you want to be seated if you're not going to be in the top 2 or 3, because these matchups that we're going to be talking about, they would be a little bit interesting. Just as a reminder, my Week 11 predictions for the quarterfinals, my Big Ten champ was Oregon. They were the 1st seed. Georgia was my SEC champion. That didn't age well. That didn't go well. They were the 2 seed. 3 seed was Miami. That didn't go well, but I've been calling that one for a few weeks. And Iowa State. 3 out of my 4 in the quarterfinals were busts. That's the beauty about this. Now let's
on to the next week. Create the new paper.
Conference champions: Oregon Big Ten, Texas SEC. Yeah. Because I think that they do still have the talent. They just played such a bad game in the first half against Georgia and couldn't out overcome it.
And they went out and they beat A&M at the end of the year. They were in the conference championship. There's zero doubt about that.
And I think that whoever shows up on the other side of the conference championship in a neutral site game I think Texas might be a little bit better in that situation. CU, my Big 12 champions. I know.
What they saw last week. I liked what I saw last week.
It was a solid. That was the most fun that I've had watching a CU game for a while. We've never been the bad boys. We've never been the team that people get pissed off at. This is awesome.
It's fun. It's a different edge, and like I said, the rest of the schedule, CU wins out. They're in the Big 12 championship. That's not even an argument. There's nothing else that needs to happen. You win.
No.
Last couple of games against Utah, I forgot what the last game. Maybe it's Oklahoma State. I can't remember the last couple.
It's Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State.
Utah and Kansas are both below 500, if not wavering around that. And Oklahoma State is obviously one of the better teams, but they're still they've had some bad losses too. There's a real possibility Deion Sanders could be having a bye, ladies and gentlemen. It's a conversation. That's very, very real, ladies and gentlemen. Very real.
That's where I have them slotted.
I had them
ACC champion. My ACC champion. SMU. See,
if that happens, I think Boise State is the bye then.
Well, if that happens, what I'm thinking now is that SMU and Clemson play, because here's the thing about Miami's path. They have a terrible resume. If they lose another game, Clemson has the equal record and they have a better strength of schedule. So Clemson goes to play SMU in the ACC championship game, and then Miami's totally left out. I have Miami as one of my teams that are totally off.
I still think there's a real conversation. Boise State gets a bye. I'm just going
In that situation, there's definitely a better conversation
I am
because
a mid-major guy. Everyone knows that. Okay, I love my mid-majors, and I love
mid-major
my.
football is different, Nico. That ain't football.
I know, but still, I want to see Ashton GT get a bye. Is all I'm going to say, and see that excitement in the quarterfinals of the college football playoff.
We might need to start adding this in as one of the segments because my students know that we have the podcast, so they start to try and come up with sports takes. You want to know the one that I heard today? Ashton Genty's going number 2 overall.
Okay, all right, yeah, okay. To the who? The Panthers?
Yeah, somebody like at that point I was like, guys, there's no.
I think he's gonna be a first round pick.
Yeah, he'd be a first round pick. There is no NFL GM that's going to stake their career with the knife on a Mountain West running back with over 400 carries in his career as a top 5 overall pick. And said,
5'9".
Yeah, 5'9", 215-pound running back.
This is not Bijan Robinson at 6'3", an absolute unit at Texas. Like this is like don't get me wrong, Ashton GC is electric. And do I think he could have a career in the NFL? Yeah, absolutely. There's smaller running backs that have been making a massive wave in the coming years. That's not dead. Darren Sproles was the leading charge of that. Okay, like there's a spot for him in the NFL. Number 2 overall. If you draft him number 2 overall, I pray for your fan base because they may lose their minds. And maybe
Las Vegas.
If the Cowboys are pick number 2 overall and they tank so bad and pick Ashton GT, I wouldn't be surprised. There it is. I wouldn't be surprised because I think that they want him more than anything and want that running back because he's from Texas too. So I think that they'd enjoy that very much.
Oh boy,
that's the only way that happens. By the way, whoever your student that said that, by the way, it's the only way that happens. Cowboys suck and number 2 overall pick and pick him.
I laughed it off, and then I said that verbatim. Nobody's going to stick a knife in the wall for Mountain West running back like that. That ain't happening.
Except the Cowboys.
Boise.
Maybe the Jets. Screw it. Maybe the Jets. The Jets are
good.
Jets
because they don't have Allen, Brees Hall, and Ashton Genty.
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Boise was my 5th seed. Indiana my 6th. I had Notre Dame 7 seed. Penn State 8. Tennessee 9. Which means that they beat Georgia this weekend, in my mind. I just think that might happen. If Iamaleava doesn't play, then it's different. Ohio State is my 10 seed. 11 is BYU after losing to CU in the Big 12 championship. We already had that conversation. You're starting to convince me that might just get left off if they don't win the conference. And then Bama snuck in as my 12 seed. I have Bama.
So let me throw the wrench and everything. Because I love throwing wrenches and everything. And everyone loves my bracketology and I love dissecting different things and all that. Army is undefeated still.
They are, but here's the thing. They are not
undefeated Army.
They're not high enough ranked right now. They're not high enough ranked. It does go based off of the finish of the ranking. So if they continue to be undefeated,
do they count for Conference USA championship or is that?
They're in the American. They're in the AAC conference.
So, I mean, I know they're not that highly ranked. I get it, but it's a conversation.
Definitely. Here's the thing: they qualify. They qualify for it. They're 9-0. They're ranked 24th in this week's college football playoff rankings. They only moved one spot.
They win the conference championship. That's a conference champion. It's undefeated. I'm not saying they're going to buy, but I'm saying.
But they wouldn't be the second highest. They wouldn't be the next highest ranked conference champion. That's the Group of 5 champion. That would be Boise. Boise screws them. Boise screws them unless Boise loses another game.
It's still an undefeated conference champion though, and
I mean they may get an at-large, but I think that would be a slap in the face to be a conference champion and get an at-large bid.
Well, I know. I'm just saying, like if it look, just for all sense of purposes, like I bring up the example like I did last time. If the SEC has a 3-loss team, right? They have 3-loss teams, and I'm not saying Army's better than Georgia. I'm not saying Army's better than Alabama. Let me make that very, very clear before I say this. I think there's a conversation that they're the last team in. I'm dead serious. I think the committee may consider it. I'm
and leave out an SEC champion?
Not an SEC champion. I'm saying one of the extra SEC teams. I'm not saying SEC champion. I am just putting that into the perspective. SEC champion gets a bye. That was such a wild thing that I was talking about. That's a 0.0001% chance of happening. That's not going to happen. Okay, so that's why I just brought it up. Just because like I said, I love bracketology. But I'm just saying, non-SEC champion / a team that didn't get in the SEC championship. They didn't play for it, and Army's undefeated.
I guess since it's the first year,
that is a real conversation. I'm sorry, that's
I guess since it's the first year, they can just make up the rules as they go. We don't know how it's going to happen. This will be the first time that any of us see it. In the way that I interpret everything, with Boise there's a log jam for the 5th conference championship spot.
Well,
I don't know.
I don't think the committee's also just locked into 5 conference champions. I think that it helps that Boise is obviously winning, and I think that it helps them winning a bigger conference because the Mountain West is bigger than the AAC. It's the 5th, technically, it's the 4th biggest conference. If you want to throw in the Pac-12 because it doesn't even exist anymore, or maybe the 5th, or what's her the number? Yeah, ACC, 5th biggest conference. Excuse me, 5th biggest conference in college football. That's a they throw themselves into the hat there, obviously for that reason. But I just think that.
Well, then how do you justify leaving out the Sun Belt conference champion who might be a team that only has 1 loss on the season?
The difference
that's the slippery. No, but that's the slippery slope. Is if you start adding in conference champions as at-large bids.
It's not just that. It's not necessarily an at-large bid. It's the last team getting in, and I get it, strength of schedule and all of that. But we obviously they didn't fucking care about it last week. They cared about it this week. But
I have a suggestion. Let's do a pigtail match, a pigtail game between the top 2 group of 5 conference champions. So you win your conference championship, then you got to play to get onto the bracket, and then you get to host a playoff game.
Then you're calling playing games, and that's literally what college basketball is made for. And that's a lot.
Pigtail match is a wrestling thing. I just came from a wrestling duel. That's what we called it.
All I'm saying is this: come week, what is it? When does the committee come out? Middle of December.
This is week 12 coming up. There's going to be week 13. Week 14 is the Army-Navy game, and then week 15 will be conference championships.
So that's like middle of December, kind of. Oh. So a month away from the final rankings come out. I think in a month there's going to be a conversation for Army. I'm dead serious because they're not going. I don't think they're going to lose. And I'm not saying an at-large bid. I'm just saying I think that the fact that they won their conference and that they did go undefeated. If they do, obviously, this could change in a full fucking week's time, and the conversation could be over with coming next week, whoever they play this week. But that's the best part about college football. So I just think there's going to be a conversation. I don't think it's. I'm not.
It could be.
Let me make it very, very clear. I don't think they're better than any of the teams that we've talked about. Okay, I don't think that they're better than A&M. I don't think they're better than Kansas State. I don't think they're better than CU. I don't think they're any better than these teams that are on the bubble as it is. But I just do think that that if they want to take such an emphasis on conference champions, and especially a team that's undefeated, I get the Americans worse than the other. I think it does add a wrinkle into the resume of being a conference champion and running the table.
They have this is like a project that was turned in when the guy started it the night before because they just didn't think about all of these different scenarios. I don't know if they're going to expand past 12. But at this point, maybe it's worth it so that all of the conference champions can get in, and then that's still something that you have an incentive to do.
I don't know about all of the conference champions.
It's just enough so that you can have everybody knows the conferences that always have somebody that can be there. Yeah. The American, the Mountain West, Louisiana out of the Sun Belt has been pretty good. Appalachian State has had a few decent seasons, but everybody knows that there's a few teams that can play with the big boys, or at least conferences that have teams that can play with the big boys. We don't need to worry about anything else. No, it's literally 1 or 2 teams. And if anybody is hurt on those 1 or 2 teams, the big dogs just play with their food. That's all they do.
You're not wrong. Like I said, I don't think that they're better. I just think that it could be a conversation.
No, this is the fun part about this. This is what's going to be the best thing about college football playoff as the 12-team format moving forward is that every year we're going to have all of these wild debates, and it's wild to have these debates now because half of the teams that I ended up putting on my bracket still have to play against each other. So it's a coin flip as to where they're going to land. I will just go. So I'm going to give everybody my quarterfinals on. I had Bama beating SMU 38-3, That's why I was texting you about blowouts, by the way, because the way certain games on my bracket fell, I was like,
I think is feasible.
yeah, that one would be definite, I think. Penn State loses to Oregon 24-21. James Franklin still can't win the big game. Indiana loses to CU 38-35.
Oh, that would. I'm just gonna say this right now. If that happens, there's going to be let's just say one of my friend groups back home is going to be lit on fire.
Yeah,
a lot
well,
of CU and Indiana fans is all I'll say. I would bring a popcorn bucket just to sit in that room and watch that game with them. My gosh.
can we bring a camera and stream it?
Oh
Jesus.
my gosh.
That's after Indiana whops BYU in the first round, 35-14. They get beat by 3 in by CU, and then Ohio State loses 31-14 to Texas. That's where I had that one. I don't know why I picked these scores. It feels like Texas at that point. Ohio State couldn't really stand up to. I don't trust Will Howard against a really good defense like Texas. The only reason why Texas gave up more than 30 points against Georgia is because the offense of Texas gave Georgia the ball on the 25-yard line twice. That's literally the only time. They did not drive the length of the field more than, I think, 1 or 2 times. Semifinals, I have Bama, Oregon, CU, Texas. So we get a little bit of a flashback Big 12 championship vibes. Hopefully it doesn't end up the same way because Joel Klatt got his ass knocked out in that game back in 2005. Bama, Oregon, I have Oregon winning 35-31. Jalen Milroe just quite can't get it done. Dylan Gabriel is continuing his Cinderella story. CU falls short to Texas.
Yeah,
Quinn Ewers.
I think that's just that. I don't even hate that. That's
24-21. So it's a solid game, and it's a huge exclamation point on a hell of a season, like best season.
If CU does that, it is the best season since the national championship for CU. So I'm
Yeah.
say that is a absolute success for a team that didn't get a bowl game last year, by the way. So that would be an absolute historic run for Shador and Travis Hunter and Dion and company.
Yeah, I think that would be they end with 13 wins. They would be 13-4 at the end of the season.
That's literally the entire 360 from 2 years ago. Like, was it 13 losses or maybe it was 12? I don't remember.
They only played 12 games because they didn't get any extra games, so they were 1-12. 1-11. Damn it, 1-11. I suck at math. National championship, Oregon at Texas. The eyes of Texas are not upon thee. 17-14. The Ducks still. I have them now 2 weeks in a row, which might start pissing off some Oregon fans, but I have them 2 weeks in a row as my pick to be the national champion. I just like what that team is all about. I've been seeing a whole bunch of what Dan Lanning's been telling those guys. So yeah, they've been playing kind of weaker competition in their Big Ten schedule. He's doing the old gladiator shit. Like, there's gonna come a point in this game where you will look around and nobody's gonna be here. And that's the moment that we thrive on. And as soon as that happens, everybody on the Oregon sidelines legit Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, when all those Michigan fans fled the stadium, I remember seeing that video where they just all sat there and watched everyone around there, and I was like, that could be. I mean, Oregon, I think, is one of the best teams in the country. They've consistently looks like. Obviously, the Ohio State game is the outlier, and that's a tough one. Tough one to think about because obviously they won and it was a game that was at home, but that's like the biggest game they've played all season. They've had some opponents that have been a little bit weaker. The Big Ten has been very top heavy and very weak at the bottom. And if that Ohio State game, if they show what they did during that Ohio State game throughout the rest of the season, going to the playoff, I don't deny. I don't doubt it a bit that they could go on a run.
The notable teams that I have left out: Miami, Texas A&M, and Georgia. I listen and I treat his word almost as gospel, but Joel Klatt had a very good point. The SEC is going to have a few like 10-2 teams, or at least have the possibility to have a few 10-2 teams.
So in your bracket, just thinking about it logically, Georgia at 2 losses overlaps BYU, who has 1 loss and is not conference champion.
Yeah, no, here's
that's the
way that it shakes out. But I also think that that means Tennessee wouldn't be on my bracket if Georgia is 2 loss because I have Tennessee beating them. That's the way that one it went in my mind. with like I said, with Iamaleava, I'd probably just swap Tennessee and Georgia and have Georgia be my 9 and go on the road to play Penn State. And I think they beat Penn State in that game, even in Happy Valley. I don't know. I picked Penn State to go on that little bit of a run and make it to the quarterfinals because I didn't trust the freshman quarterback going into Happy Valley in the first ever playoff game.
Boy, the 8-9 matchup is going to be a lot of fun. Like just looking at my chops at it, whoever it is, that 8-9 matchup is going to be so much fun. It is going. I predict it being an SEC versus a Big Ten, and I think that they kind of want that as the 8-9. And boy, that's going to be, that's going to be fun. I think it's going to be exciting.
And I think about it. I don't know if it's going to be this year, but there's going to be a year where a 12 seed just goes on an unprecedented run. I feel like a semifinal run from a 12 seed would be pretty unprecedented, but I don't know if it'll be this year. There's going to be
if it's a Georgia as a 12 seed or an Alabama as a 12 seed, I don't think that it's that far fetched to think that they could go on a run.
I'm not necessarily talking about those guys. They might do it early, but when let's say Indiana, after Kirk Cignetti leaves for whatever job he's going to take next, they kind of fall back down, but then they get themselves back to not as good as they were, but a little bit, make the 12th seed, go on a Hoosiers run, make another movie starring Hugh Jackman, even though he's 99 years old. All of that stuff might be possible. But let's wrap things up here. We're going to go to our segment